everyone. Welcome to the inaugural Readyset Fireside Chat. My name is Tanmay Sinha, and I lead the product team for Readyset. For folks who are unfamiliar with what Readyset does, we are a database scaling platform that uses SQL query caching to help our customers get most out of their existing Postgres and MySQL infrastructure. The goal of the Fireside Chats is to have an informal discussion on new and interesting ways to get most out of your databases. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. If you are interested in participating in one of our fireside chats, please reach out to me via LinkedIn or email. I will share the details at the end. So, without further ado, let's get started. Today, I have with me Javier and Marcelo Altmann. Javi is the founder of ScaleDB and also the head of platform at ClickFunnels. Marcelo is a senior software engineer at Readyset and an expert on everything MySQL. I will let them introduce themselves. Javi, I'll start with you.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Yes, as someone said, my name is Javier. I'm dealing with databases for probably 20 years. I started way before MySQL had store procedures and views. And in the last 6-7 years, I'm doing focus on the performance on ClickFunnels, one of the big clients on ScaleDB. Yeah, Marcelo.
Hey everyone, Marcelo Altmann here. As Tamay mentioned, I'm a senior software engineer here at Readyset, building this beautiful product to scale your database. Before Readyset, I also worked a few years at Percona, where I crossed a path with Javi. And I'm also working with MySQL since 2006 from an operational view, and also developing fixes and internals of the database itself.
So, Javi, can you talk a little bit about what was it that was troubling you with your database deployment at ClickFunnels? What didn't really feel right? And more importantly, how was it impacting your day-to-day operations and your end user experience?
Yeah, so when I joined ClickFunnels, they were running a huge SaaS application with around 8 readers on Aurora, right? Like they use Aurora here. At some point, the cost of running that huge infrastructure was enough to start focusing on trying to save money. Some missing indices, some tuning on the application side, but at some point you get so lean on usage of the database that when you get a request for saving cost, it's kind of like, well, I cannot, right? So one of the big deals that we were facing is we started using proxy SQL, one of the solutions, right? Like our application was not allowed to decide when to use a reader and when to use a primary, so that was hurting a ton on performance. So proxy SQL bring us some clarity and some help to the database world, right? To get this application running faster. At some point, proxy SQL was not able. The solution on caching on proxy SQL is not that interested or that powerful as Readyset, right? So on the engineering side, you always use caching on Redis or Memcache, but honestly, the solution that Readyset brought it up, like I call like the smart caching, that helps us a ton, right? So we literally took 80% of the cost on the database, gone on the period of like 4 or 5 years, just using specific techniques, right? Including Readyset. So
how do you see teams traditionally approach this challenge where you're starting to see a lot of usage, be it on the workload side or just being it on the performance side?
Yeah, so as on the sysadmin world or on the database world, you always fight against roadmaps, right? So most of the time, you literally have engineers that they need to release products or features, and you have the performance as not as a count as a feature itself, right? That comes up when you have a ton of customers or you need to save money or etc. So that is a normal approach on any engineering group. You tend to release features rather than performance, right? So this approach that Readyset brings it up, it's basically you let the product team work. You have a pretty good pane of glass to see what queries are coming in, and then with your knowledge as DBA, you can realize which one you can send that to a different tooling, right? So in this case with Readyset, imagine as a DBA trying to do that and saying this query goes to Redis, right? Like that's pretty hard as a DBA dealing with the network and everything without coding itself, right? So that was the literally the aha moment when you see, like, as a DBA, you can, besides adding indexes or like increasing performance on the database with tuning or anything, as a DBA, you can press a button and then now you have a query running 100 times faster, right? So that honestly, that's how I see on ScaleDB or in ClickFunnels, how it's a different way to promote that, right? So yeah.
Marcelo, coming to you, what did you think about Javi's challenge? Why do you think caching, and more specifically Readyset, was going to be a great fit for what he was seeing at his deployment?
Right. So in the beginning of the engagement with Javi, I think 4 things stood out that Readyset was the right solution. First, his concern with this like never ending scaling up of his database was his first concern, in a sense that if his application was getting like 10 times more users, it means that his application was growing 10 times the database was growing in the same manner. And we know by a fact that we can scale database reads with a fraction of the costs. So just for that point alone, I knew Readyset was checking a box. The other thing was his data access pattern was something that during the discussion, like we were able to establish that a lot of data he has, like it's hot data that it's queried multiple times over a small period of time. So it was a perfect fit for a caching solution. And also parts of his application really required low latency, in a sense that Readyset can deliver that, like queries with sub-millisecond latency. So this was the other thing that checked a box, in a sense that, well, perhaps Readyset will indeed be the right solution here. The other thing is Javi is the head of platform. He had a challenge to save money with database costs. It will be super hard for him to go back to the application and say, you guys have to implement a different API right now in order to use cache. Right. So the solution should be transparent to the application. It should talk the same language that the application is running right now without having to require any code change, which we do. Like we implement the wire protocol for MySQL and Postgres. In ClickFunnels case is MySQL. So that was just a drop-in replacement. And the fourth point is that Javi is familiar with managing MySQL and proxy SQL. He does that by connecting using like the MySQL client and connecting to proxy SQL, executing the queries required to manage proxy SQL. It does the same on MySQL to create an index. So the solution should not bring like a burden or a huge learning curve for Javi, which again, Readyset does. Like you manage Readyset as you are managing a MySQL or a proxy SQL. So it didn't require Javi to have like a huge learning curve for adding a new product to his stack. It was completely integrated with what he already had there. So I think those are the 4 points that to me was easy and clear that Readyset was the right solution for them.
What were some of the things out of that stood out for you, specifically when it came to how Readyset would be able to address those challenges? And did you agree with some of those points that Marcelo was making?
Yes, no, totally. It makes it, like every single point was one of the reasons we choose Readyset. Imagine this: this is not the only project that we are doing, right? Like we are using we are focusing on another data project, which basically real-time analytics for the entire platform, right? And getting into a different solution that we are doing, it's already running on 9 months, and we keep working. This is like, it's a normal software project, right? Like you have engineers working on the adapter needs to get tuned. Like those tunes need performance reviews and everything, which is like normal. We are planning like around a year and a half to get that done and ready for the customers, right? With Readyset was the POC was literally running into production. Yes, it could be a little harder if you don't know how the things goes in production, but as Marcelo said, you are integrated with Proxy SQL. So honestly, if we see some issues, we just flip the switch on Proxy SQL and we keep using the normal database. You don't need to backfill anything, right? Like it's the same wire that you took MySQL, you took Proxy SQL, you took Readyset. So those are it's easy when you know all the wall that they touch, like it's only MySQL. You don't need to involve engineers. Of course, you need metrics, which Readyset provides those as well. So it's kind of like easy, go in and just implement. Our POC was like 2 weeks. Bringing up Readyset into our production environment was in a few days. We had the first query running on Readyset, right? So that makes for me that my team in ClickFunnels, we are five people, right? So imagine you don't have the how you say you don't have that thing that you can involve 2-3 people, QA, product managers, ops. Yes, it's like we need to go fast. And honestly, the first query that we enabled was just for testing. The second query that we enabled cut 40% of the traffic to the database, right? So we, as Marcelo said, from one side we create content, but from the other side we have terabytes of traffic into that content, right? So, and that is where the caching solution helps us. So honestly, yeah, running that in the POC transforming into production like pretty quick. That's no brainer when we choose this solution.
So you've already touched on this because you had it going with the support of Proxy SQL. You were able to run it in a risk-free way within your environment within just a couple of days, a very short amount of time, and over a period of a couple of weeks, you were able to transition more and more queries, which made you sort of see the value almost immediately with minimal risk. You kind of walked us through what your onboarding experience was. What was it that surprised you the most when you started adding more?
To my side, it's kind of like we always, like you always heard this sales pitch, right? Like 100 times faster. It's like, yeah, whatever. Could be like 3 or 4x. That's enough, right? But we saw how like 40,000 requests per second query, which is like that's the numbers that we tend to use on we tend to see that on ClickFunnels, disappear from the server, and they were literally nanoseconds response time on Readyset, right? So I'm always tend to be agnostic, or like I don't trust on too much of those stuff. But when you see in production running, that's what's like empower you to keep moving. And literally, like I keep talking about Proxy SQL. That's because it's our implementation, but you can implement Readyset without Proxy SQL, right?
Right.
But having that Proxy SQL gives you the power to mirror your queries into Readyset, right? So when we start seeing that those queries were replying 10, 20, 50, 100 times faster, that was no brainer, honestly. And that was what made me, like start being involved more. And literally we were at some point we were working with Marcelo like a single team just to get this out. And honestly, that was an amazing symbiosis, right? Like asking him for stuff, he asking me for stuff, getting stuff done. On the onboarding piece, you don't see too much of those stuff. You can see somebody just rooting for their product or me rooting for my company. And this one was like, I see the power on what you are doing. Let me help you with real traffic, real throughput, right? So that was like, I think that was an amazing symbiosis and helping on the product, right? So that was amazing.
That's awesome to hear. So, Marcelo, follow-up question for you here. You, as Javi was mentioning, like you have been working very closely with him on getting this onboarded, getting it ready. What was your experience like in general for this engagement compared to similar ones that you have had in the past? And also, I'll ask this question up front to you. What surprised you the most after you saw it in this setting at ClickFunnels?
Right. So in terms of what made this particular engagement unique is that, as Javier mentioned, like they rely heavily on proxy SQL, and we have built integration so we can work seamless with proxy SQL. Our integration, it does basically like two things. One is automatic query caching, which we got this a lot, like people that have database performance issues, but they don't know which particular query it's causing the problem. So
Right.
our integration allows you to automatically inspect your proxy SQL, for example, and base it on defined rules that you do. For example, the number of queries that you want to cache, like 10 queries. And based on metrics, you can choose to cache like 10 queries that are hitting the database more often. So they are causing load spikes on your database, or queries that run slow, for example, they always run slow. So those are causing like performance drawbacks on your database, or standard deviation, for example. A query sometimes run fast or sometimes it runs slow. So it's not predictable. So this integration allows you to choose between 9 different query metrics to choose queries hurting database performance. And apart from that, the integration also does like health checks, more internal health checks that integrates with proxy SQL in a sense that it knows if we are doing like snapshotting, creating a cache, if we should be taking this particular Readyset instance out of proxy SQL. So this integration does this health check part. So in the past, like normally people use the whole integration, but with Javi, we have choose to just do health checks with proxy SQL and Readyset. And because Javi has all the intelligence with regards to how his application uses the database, we have chosen to go and manually select which queries we would like to cache based on his experience. So this was the part that was unique to this
Right.
engagement, and it honestly it was perfect. But and going into what made me more surprised was how well we integrated everything, in a sense that for each module of his application, we will have like 2 Readyset instance working on HA. We will create a cache on one of the instance. The scheduler will automatically remove this instance from production, so it will create the cache. We will choose at the beginning to just like mirror the traffic of newly created caches, while some of the traffic was being redirected to Readyset. Some of the traffic was just mirrored. The integrations we have with Grafana allowed us to check these caches, how the latency, like P99, P100 latency was going. So we could monitor once the latency was dropping to 200 microseconds, we knew that, well, this cache is warm, then we can just adjust this particular rule to be, instead of a mirror, to be a destination. So the whole package working together and we manually doing this, it was awesome. And one other thing that Javi mentioned was that I think there was one particular query that we redirected to Readyset and was responsible for about 40% of the traffic of his database.
Right.
We were able to handle that with, I think Readyset was not hitting even like 10% of CPU usage. So with a fraction of the cost, with a fraction of the hardware, we still have like 9x room for improvement to add more load in Readyset. So this was really a surprise to me.
That
in
is
comparison,
awesome.
like how the end database versus we caching, how the resource consumption goes, like we are way more optimized than the database.
That is awesome to hear. I, so Javi, I think that one is a fantastic example, and I think we have talked about it in the blog as well. Now that you have sort of gone from that one query and you have expanded to more and also added other things, what is the noticeable difference that you have seen in your operations and in general with Readyset in your environment that you want to call out?
Yeah, so first of all, like for the technical guys technical people that they are listening to us, it's not magic, right? Like the easier way to see it is like the database has a ton of processing to process something. Readyset knows what you are asking and is replying the results, right? So it's if you think about in the way of key value, right? Like you have a hash on the query that you know what is the answer and you just returning the answer. So it's not magic. It's not like it's not like that. Besides that, on the technical side, it's like Readyset knows what you are changing on the database, right? Could be Postgres or MySQL, but Readyset is knowing what's going on the database, so they apply the same changes on their own side. So that is like it's not magic. It's how it works. On the side of like how we see this on examples, right? Besides that, the CPU load on the database went to 0. We have some databases that we have there just sitting for HA. So Readyset is not specifically a database, so you cannot use Readyset as HA, right? So if you need to fail over your primary, you cannot use Readyset. You need another database, but that database right now for us is 0 load. On the blog, you can see how the CPU went down pretty hardly, and people get concerns. Like, where is my load on the database? It's like, well, it's in another box, it's in another services. But the way that's say cost, literally, we went from as I was saying at the beginning, we went from 8 readers to only 1 that is sitting there, right? So besides, it's good to have always one to take a load if you need to do some maintenance or anything, right? So that's crazy. Like literally saving money. We use, as I was telling you, we use Aurora, and Aurora is one of the like the expensive services that you have outside on the right. So imagine having top level tier of Aurora running eight servers there, and now you just cut into 2. So that was a really great example of like even finance loves us. They don't know what's going on, but they know that we are spending less, so they love us. On the operation side, on like people internally on the engineering side, they are literally asking for more Readyset because they understood that first of all, it's not magic, right? If you have a query that you already tuned, select something from a table where ID is something. It's like primary key lookup. That's easier, right? That's the most fast way that you can get data from the database. Even with that, we are running 40,000 requests of those. How you scale that? Like they did all the tuning that they can do. Well, you just put Readyset, and now it's coming from nowhere 10 times or 50 times faster, right? Even 5 millisecond response time went into 5 nanoseconds. So that's still a great timing, right? So to be honest, even New Relic can graph that. You can see like the throughput grows up and the response time is still almost 0. So that's amazing. So yeah, those are live production examples that they are happening literally right now. And I was literally with an eye on this graph because it's like it's always happening, right? So That's amazing. That's a great example of things happening right now on production.
Just one more question before we close. Are there any features or capability that you wish Readyset had to make it even more better than what you're experiencing today?
This is a live feature request. We at least Marcelo already knows that. On our specific case and other cases that I know, the one caveat that I see on Readyset is the needs that you cache a single user request, right? So we are a monolithic, right? So we don't have too many users that connects to the database, but applying the same solution into microservice world, not saying that it's good, just saying like you have a ton of companies doing that. You could have like some implementation issues where if you need every single user hitting their own Readyset, that could be a challenge, right? So having multiple front ends users connecting to Readyset and Readyset using their own server, their own user server, their own backend user server, right? That could be great. That we use proxy SQL on the same way, right? Like we connect with a ton of users and proxy SQL goes down. So that's something like it's not to us. We don't see that impact. Literally, when we figure out that that was the issue, we just change the username on the database on the application, and that's it, right? We don't have that big of concern. But on microservices world, you can see that being effect.
I want to get your opinion on a few forward-looking things, and before we close. So, both of you are experts in the combination of database-related topics, and database landscape in general keeps transforming almost yearly basis. I mean, I'm not going to go shorter than that because then it becomes just a fad. But after going through what you went with, this combination of proxy SQL, Readyset, Aurora, PMM, the Percona monitoring management, how do you see that transforming just in general our ability to handle database scaling in future? Javi, I'll start with you.
Sure. So to me, as we already said, I'm coming from the MySQL world, right? So having the right tooling to cache from the MySQL protocol, right? Like as Readyset does, and it's not like, oh, you need to add Redis, you need to add memcache, you need to use cache. It's like literally you just use everything on the MySQL protocol, even with the same CLI, right? Like you can use Workbench or MySQL CLI just to connect to Readyset. So that's a different thing. Like to me, we never saw that before, right? In almost 25, 30 years, we never saw that kind of stuff. So that's a different way to think. Was the same approach when proxy SQL came up. You had proxies outside for MySQL, but the way that proxy SQL handled that layer 7 between your application and the database, it's it's a different level. Readyset comes on the same way. The way that you handle caching, it's in a different level. And honestly, you can have any flavor, well, not all of them, but any flavor on the MySQL side and works perfectly, right? Like that's a next way to deploy databases. Proxy SQL has Postgres as well now. So you are on the Postgres way. You have a way to extend your caching on Postgres. Proxy SQL is there as well. So I think between Postgres and MySQL, to me, we don't have any other transactional database that is not MySQL or Postgres. MySQL any flavor, Postgres, but to me, it's when you get into the conversation of like, well, how you deploy your database for production environments, I always said like you need these three guys running, right? PMM, it's there way longer but than like proxy SQL and everything, but that integration that Percona did for having all these metrics into a single pane of glass is the monitoring that you cannot miss, right? So everything open source with different licenses, but you can just get into and starting pretty easy. I know that Readyset has an amazing product on the cloud as well, so it's no brainer. You don't need to think too much. on deploying this stuff. It's not, you are not deploying Kubernetes, right? It's something like everything's use the same protocol. It's just a few configurations, and now you are good to go, right? So that's not very, yes.
Marcelo, same question to you.
Javi covered a good portion of what I think as well, but I truly believe that this combination of, like, right now, as Javi mentioned, like proxy SQL, it's also being introduced in the Postgres landscape. So I truly believe that your database, a good proxying layer in front of it, a good monitoring solution, and a cache layer to cache, like, but as we always say, like internally, like around 10% of your data, it's a must. Every single deployment will require that. And to not have these barrier of implementation, they have to work well together. And I think that, like, from our side, Readyset comes in to fill this gap of a good caching layer that integrates with all of the tools that people are used out there. And talking about monitoring, and one thing that we used with Javi's deployment, even the logs that we produce with Readyset, we are able to send them to PMM using like Promptail and Locky. And without having to connect to the machine, I have one single dashboard that I can see everything, like how my disks are, how many cache hits I'm having, if I had any error message on my log. So everything at glance, like a single snapshot of how is the health of my entire stack. So I think this is easy, and especially when you start to having like multiple deployments, it's hard for you to go every morning,
Right.
go and connect to 50 different machines to see how things are going. And on top of that, we also have, like, with integration with all these mix, like logs, PMM, we also have alerting that can be configured with everything. So if you can alert if you are having a bad hit ratio in one particular cache, if a cache used to go into nanoseconds and now it's responding on milliseconds, you name it. So you can be prepared for the worst with all the combination of those four tools.
It sort of gives you a way to get started quickly at a lower risk and then keep it going. What are the things you're up to and for the next few months?
So from my side, like we wear different hats. So development work, we are focusing a lot on usability. We call like day one and day two enhancements for Readyset. Username, I'm not doing any commitment here, but like username, failovers, being able to re-snapshot tables without having to restart Readyset. So we are really focusing on the management part of Readyset and making the user experience more seamless. In terms of where you can see us, I think we will be joining FOSDEM on February. So if you are heading to Belgium, you can get a chance to talk to us, Tamai, myself, Gautam, CEO, will also be there. I am on the committee for the MySQL dev room, so we are looking for calls for paper. So if you want to have like 25 minutes on stage, submit, you have until the 31st of this month to submit. And I think that's it from my side.
Javi, same questions. Anything you want folks to know, what you have going on, where can they find you and learn about more about what you do?
Yeah, so I will try to be at FOSDEM as well. Literally, I know that I have till the end of this month on November to present. I'm still on the fence if I need to present what should I present? Like I have so many stuff that I will literally want to present. So I need to do that faster as fast as I can. ClickFunnels itself will be in Brazil on the Tropical RB, which is a Ruby conference as well. I will be as well over there. I don't know if I will be able to present, but the idea is to literally present this kind of like cool stuff, right? Most of the engineers or the developers, they always know that they deploy and something happens on the other side. This is the other side, right? So
Right.
I feel like this will be like way more interested for engineers rather than DBAs, right? But that's the idea, focusing on the engineering side. And on the ScaleDB, we are keep growing, trying to my big idea, I won't commit anything online, but my big idea is putting all these things together, even on your laptop, sometimes it's a little tricky, right? So having that ready, so you can, like you just pull this and it's running. I think that will speed up a way more on the usage, right? Like installing MySQL is just apt or brew install, right? But all the other pieces you just need to connect. That's what we are trying to do with the ScaleDB, getting this out and giving to the people so they can start using it, feel it, and then like helping us to grow as a business. So that's a big idea. Hopefully I could get that before FOSDEM. If not, we'll be on April. But yeah, that's a big idea. Yes, I heard that Gotham already went to Brazil, so now it's your time to fly to Brazil.
See, that's what I'm trying to line up for. Anyway, thank you both of you. I appreciate your time. I think this was a fantastic conversation, a really good discussion that I think a lot of other folks will benefit from as well. So with that, I will close the session, and again, hope to see another one of these in the next a few months. Thank you, everyone.